All right, so I think we can get started. There's some information in your chat section if you would like to look that over. I will also be discussing that in our intro slide, but I think participants are out of the lobby and we can begin. So, hi, my name is Maggie Massey, and I'm a senior environmental scientist working on CDFW's Cannabis Restoration Grant Program. And before we get started, a few things to go over. This is being recorded, and we will be posting a copy of the presentation on the grant webpage. And also, everyone will be on mute throughout the presentation to reduce any echoing or background noises. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand or type a question into the chat section, directing it to Janice Mackey. And at the end of the presentation, we will then go through the chat questions and address the raised hands as well. And so with that, again, my name is Maggie, and really appreciate everyone who is here today to learn more about CDFW's Cannabis Restoration Grant Program, Draft Watershed Remediation and Enhancement Solicitation. So the outline of the presentation will start with some background for this Cannabis Restoration Grant Program funding opportunity, and then go over specifics of the solicitation, such as eligibility, proposal requirements, and the submission and approval process. We'll also take a look at the timeline and then go over any questions and comments. And again, I encourage you to type your questions into the chat to Janice. A quick background, the grants program we are working on is provided through the Environmental Restoration and Protection Account pursuant to the Revenue and Taxation Code, Section 34019F2. This dedicated funding source is continuous appropriation and has the focus for the first 5 years of cleanup, remediation, and restoration of environmental damage in watersheds affected by cannabis cultivation and related activities. And the department may allocate funds for this purpose through a grant program. And so the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program team worked on developing funding opportunities for the focus identified in the Revenue and Taxation Code, and through that developed priorities, 2 of which have been organized under the Watershed Remediation and Enhancement Solicitation. The Watershed Remediation and Enhancement Solicitation is a competitive program with the anticipated funding amount of up to $2 million. Specifically for this solicitation, we have essentially combined guidelines and the solicitation into one document, which differs from other CDFW funding opportunities. Within the solicitation, you will find eligibility information, funding priorities, project categories, general conditions and requirements such as environmental compliance and monitoring, information on the submission process, along with information on the review and approval process, including an evaluation criteria specific to the solicitation. And I'll be going over these bullet points in a bit more detail in the next few slides. Eligibility under the solicitation is defined by Fish and Game Code Section 1501.5B, and eligible applicants are federal, state, and local public agencies, nonprofit organizations, and California Native American tribes. All grants funded under the solicitation must fall within one of the following priorities and associated project types. One priority is the cleanup and remediation of illicit cannabis cultivation impacts on qualified public lands, which may include lands owned by eligible entities. And the 2 project types are upland refuse and infrastructure removal, where projects will focus on cannabis cultivation site restorations that will reduce delivery of environmental contaminants and waste due to illegal cannabis cultivation in upland habitats. Another project type is riparian refuse and infrastructure removal, and this is cannabis cultivation site restoration of partially denuded banks adjacent to the stream, within the channel, and within the riparian area that will reduce delivery of environmental contaminants and waste due to illegal cannabis cultivation in stream and within the riparian area. Another priority is enhancing watershed in communities where cannabis cultivation occurs. And two of the project types are road treatments, which are necessary due to cannabis cultivation activities and include road upgrading, road decommissioning, culvert and road crossing upgrades, and other sediment prevention delivery actions. Another project type is wildlife enhancements, and this is preventing accidental injury or death, poisoning prevention, limiting human disturbance to wildlife, minimizing the spread of invasive species, and enhancing native habitats. And again, all applicants must select one priority and one project type. Another thing to note is that the proposals may only include one project category as well. So again, applicants must select only one. And the project categories we have under the solicitation are planning, which will provide funding for activities that will lead to specific on-the-ground implementation projects. There's also the refuse and infrastructure removal category. And projects here are categorically exempt from CEQA or categorically excluded from NEPA activities and will result in the cleanup and remediation of environmental damage in watersheds affected by cannabis cultivation. We also have implementation category, which will fund construction and monitoring of shovel-ready restoration and enhancement projects. Applicants must demonstrate CEQA compliance and submit 65% or higher design plans. Next up are some of the proposal conditions and requirements, which can all be found in section 4 of the solicitation, but I'm just going over a few here. And applicants must comply with applicable state and federal environmental laws and regulations, CEQA, NEPA, and other environmental permitting requirements. Applicants are responsible for obtaining all required permits, and for implementation, CEQA completion must be within 15 days prior to CDFW director approval of projects. And for refuse and infrastructure removal projects, submission of CEQA exemption to the state clearinghouse and/or exclusions to the appropriate federal agency must occur within 30 days of the grant agreement being executed to CDFW. For project monitoring and reporting, all projects required to develop project objectives and include pre and post project monitoring and reporting plan that explains how project success will be evaluated and reported. Land tenure and site control is required for projects conducting on-the-ground work, where documentation must be submitted showing that there will be adequate tenure to, site control of, and access to the project for at least 10 years. Examples of this include fee title ownership, easement or license agreement, or permission from the property owners to do work on their land. There's also a requirement of long-term management and maintenance for implementation and refuse and infrastructure removal projects, and they shall summarize long-term management and maintenance planning for at least 5 years for implementation and 2 years for the refuse and infrastructure removal projects. There's also a requirement for a hazardous material assessment, and applicants must prepare a written assessment of whether or not proposed project site contains hazardous material and provide that assessment to CDFW for review after execution of the grant agreement and before any on-the-ground project work begins. If hazardous materials are later discovered on a project site, the applicant must cease any restoration efforts and remediate the site. So for the submission of applications, it will be done through our web grant system online at watershedgrants.wildlife.ca.gov. To access the application, applicants must register an account in web grants. And we anticipate releasing the final PSN and opening up for the application process during the first week in April. And applications must be received before 4 p.m. on May 14th, 2021. To assist in completing the applications, we will be holding an online application workshop, and this is tentatively scheduled for April 19th at 10 a.m. And it will resemble the format of the Watershed Restoration Grants Branch Prop 1 application workshop, and will include training on how to use web grants. And we'll also provide basic guidance to ensure complete applications. And details will be posted on the Cannabis Restoration Grant Program webpage with the link attached below. So once May 14th closes, the applications will then go through an administrative review where we'll assign each application a pass-fail score relating to proposal requirements. The projects that pass admin review will then go to technical review, where each application is assigned a numerical score from each reviewer. Also, if applicable, projects that involve engineering design or geological investigations will go through an engineering geologic review in this technical phase. Following the technical review, the applications will go to our selection panel. And the selection panel use qualitative process that considers all the projects that passed admin review and compares them based on responsiveness to solicitation priorities, scientific merit, regional statewide priorities, and technical scores as well. Then the selection panel will make recommendations to the director, and the director will review recommendations and approve a final set of proposals. Following approval, we will formally notify the applicants of awards, and the agreement development process will begin. So our current timeline, deadline for public comments regarding the draft solicitation, March 31st, 2021. The final solicitation will be released and open for applying, and we are anticipating sometime during the week of April 5th. We will hold an application workshop, again, tentatively scheduled for April 19th, to go over the web grant system. The deadline for applications will be May 14th at 4 p.m. And finally, we plan to announce awards in late spring, early summer, and anticipate having grant agreements executed by summer or fall of 2021. So in addition to providing comments and asking questions here today, you can send comments to us by email at cangrantprogram@wildlife.ca.gov or mailing them in to Cannabis Program, PO Box 944-209, Sacramento, California, 94244. And with the questions that we respond to today and get emailed, we will be posting an FAQ document on our webpage. And again, our link is wildlife.ca.gov/conservation/watersheds/restoration-grants. And if you visit our website, you can sign up and receive all grant announcements, get updates on the program and timeline information, in addition to relevant solicitation links and information. And so with that, we're now going to answer questions that everyone has regarding the solicitation. Thank you.